Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we will be solving Leetcode problem 3254. Find the power of k size subarrays. Okay, you are given an array of integers nums of length n and a positive integer k. Power of an array is defined as it's the maximum element if all of its elements are consecutive and sorted in the ascending order, otherwise it would be -1. Okay, you need to find the power of all subarrays of nums of size k. Okay, you have to return an integer array called result of size n minus k plus 1, where result of I is basically the power of nums of I till I plus k minus 1. Okay, let's take an example. Okay, let me note down the sample example, which is 1 2 3 4 3 2 5 and k is basically 3. Okay, let me jump back to my editor. Okay, I just note down the sample array. Okay, so the idea is so we have to basically choose a subarray of size k, which is 3. So if you see, these are all possible subarrays of size 3, and all the elements in a given subarray has to be sorted and the elements should be consecutive to each other. Okay, so let's take an example. This is one subarray where all the elements are consecutive. One we after 1 we get 2, after 2 we get 3. Okay, so this is one subarray which satisfies the given criteria. All the elements are consecutive and we have a window of size 3. So the maximum in the result, we will first element would be 3. So the next subarray is basically 2 3 4. Again, all the elements in the subarray are consecutive to each other, and the maximum is basically the last element. Okay, which is basically 4. And the next subarray is basically 3 4 3. Okay, in 3 4 3 all the elements are not consecutive to each other and it's not in sorted. 3 4 is consecutive to 3. Okay, but 3 is not consecutive element to 4. Okay, so this is not a valid subarray and the power in this case would be -1 as per the question. Okay, so the next subarray would be 4 3 2. Okay, inside the 4 3 2, again all the elements are not consecutive. Okay, 4 is not consecutive to 3, 3 is not consecutive to 2, but these are consecutive elements but not in the ascending order. Okay, so again the answer would be -1. And the next consecutive array is basically, next subarray is 3 3 to 5, and all the elements are not consecutive to each other in the ascending order. So again the answer, so this is the final array which you have formed. Okay, so for every subarray, okay, so for every subarray, if you see 1 2 3 4 3 2 5, so this is the first subarray, this is the second subarray, third subarray, fourth subarray, and fifth subarray. Okay, so if we know this subarray is sorted, okay, and all the elements are consecutive, all I have to do for the next subarray, I have to just compare the new element. Okay, just have to compare the new element with the previous element. Okay, right? In the same way, if I know this entire subarray, if this entire subarray is sorted and all elements are consecutive, for the next subarray I just have to compare the new element with this previous element, right? So what I will do, I will basically, for a given subarray, I will basically keep the count. Okay, so for this subarray the count is basically 3. Okay, where what does this count is basically the count of the consecutive elements. Okay, count of the consecutive elements. So 1 is consecutive to 2, 2 is consecutive to 3, right? So the count is basically 3 here. Okay, and it's also equal to the window size, which is k equal to 3. So since the count and the size of the window are matching, so in the result array will basically have 3. Okay, so the next what I will do, I will basically have to increment my window. Okay, I have to just move to the next window, which is basically 4. The new element would be 4. So I would basically compare 4 with my previous element, okay, which is 3. Yes, it is actually the consecutive to it. Okay, but I should also decrement the count, right? So I have basically removed one from my, I have to remove one from my the subarray, and I have to include 4 in my subarray, right? So if I include one from my subarray, so I have to check whether this one was contributing to the consecutive subarray or not. Okay, yes, it's actually contributing to the consecutive subarray. So 1 is actually lesser than the 2, so I would first decrement the count to 2. Okay, and then whenever I'm incrementing the, when whenever for 4 I have to include 4 in my subarray, right? So 4 is less than 3, right? 4 is actually greater than 3, which is the consecutive element to it. Okay, again I would increment my count to 3, increment my count by 1. Again, if you see the k is actually equal to the count, then again I will include my element, the current element in my answer. So what I would do is basically I need a pointer which would basically tell me the end of the window, and I would need a pointer which will tell me the I pointed for the start of the window and then I pointed for the end of the window. Okay, so every time what I will do, I would increment my window size, and I would also decrement my window size. Okay, and check whether the count is actually uh, equal to the desired k value or not. Okay, if it is equal to the desired k value, then I have to include the last element if the last element is actually the consecutive element of the previous, or I have to include -1 in my answer. Okay, so let's jump back. I hope this makes sense. Okay, let's jump back to the IDE, and here what I would do, I'm basically sliding my window and basically checking the current element is actually consecutive to the previous element or not. If it is yes, then I'm including my the current element in the answer. If it is not a consecutive element, I will include -1, and I should, and I'm I'm also incrementing and decrementing my counter accordingly by moving the left pointer. Okay, so let's jump back to the Leetcode, and let's try to code it out. Okay, I'm back to my Leetcode. Okay, let's try to solve this problem. Okay, so as I mentioned, we need a variable to basically count the number of consecutive elements. So initially, even single element is by default considered as a sorted, right? And the number of elements in the sorted subarray is basically 1, so by default the count would be 1. And we need a variable called left, which is basically pointing to the initial element. Okay, so we'll basically traverse. We need another variable called right, which will go all the way till the end of the array. And what we'll do is basically if the previous element plus 1, if it is equal to the current element, that means the elements are consecutive. In that case, I have to increment my variable. So one thing we have to take care over here is if the right is greater than 0, then only we have to perform this particular task, or else this would lead us to index out of bound. Okay, now there is now if the window size is actually greater than k, okay, in that case we have to decrement our window size. So uh, one thing is we'll decrement our window size, but the element which we are trying to remove from our window, if it is actually the if it is contributing to the consecutive subarray, then we have to decrement our count, right? So how do I know it's contributing? If the left element is equal to the next element -1, in that case it's contributing, right? So what I would do is basically the element at the left plus 1, if it is equal to element at left plus 1, that means we are actually removing an element which is contributing to the consecutive subarray. In that case we should basically decrement our count, and then we have to increment the left pointer to shrink the window. And we should also check whether when the window size is actually equal to k, right? If the count of the consecutive elements, okay, if it is equal to the window size, in that case we should basically take the rightmost element and have it as a part of our result, or else we should have the -1 as a part of a result. Let's try to define our result array. So new int, the size of the result array would be nums of length minus k plus 1, okay, as they were mentioned over here, right? And so the result of, so we need a variable which would basically keep track of till what element I have basically populated in the result array. So I'm calling it as I. So result of I is basically the value which is coming from this, and we should also increment the value once we have populated it. Okay, let's try to return this result. Okay, let's submit this. It has satisfied the default test cases. Let's try to submit it. Yeah, this also our solution got submitted, and it actually beats most of the solutions. Yeah, do follow to my channel for more such coding videos. Thank you.